Hi, everybody, and welcome to season 2. I think it's episode 11. And today I've got the absolutely wonderful, marvelous activist. And, well, you know who she is already, isn't it? It's Figen Murray. And she's here to talk to us about Martyns Law and her journey, because a lot of people don't realize that Figen's actually an expert in much of the things that she talks about, and that activism that she's undergone over a period of several years now. She's definitely an expert. But that's enough about me introducing her. Let's hear from Figen herself. Figen, it's been I think it's almost 4 years now since we first had a chat over Zoom. And obviously, it's just amazing what you've done. You're now at this point where Rishi's said, you're going to get it. You're going to get Martyns Law through everything that you've worked for. And obviously the consultations phase is coming to an end. And therefore, please tell us, about why it's important that we push this right over the line. And in fact, we continue. It doesn't need to be the consultation, but that we continue to push for this.
Yeah, first of all, I'm simply Martyn's mum. I don't see myself as any expert at all. I come at this all to the industry purely as his mum. But do you know what? To me, Martyn's Law needs pushing because this is the one opportunity we have to get this legislation right. And that is one of the reasons why we took, as a campaign team, so many meetings with the Home Office to get the numbers in terms of capacity right, because the numbers originally were not meant to be 100, they were far higher. And we really, really fought for that. And without our persistence, that wouldn't have happened. And, it would have been a different landscape in terms of numbers. So it is important to keep the pressure up. And every time I speak to the Home Office staff who work on Martyn's Law, I always say my apologies for being so pushy on social media, but I have to, because you've put me in the position of being an activist, so I have to do my job. And I said that to Rishi Sunak when I spoke to him on the phone. I apologized to him that I have to continue the pressure, and he understands as well, thankfully. So it is never meant as a personal attack on any of the staff and the Prime Minister or anybody else. But, as I said, this is the one chance we have to get this legislation right. And of course, when the standard tier public consultation was launched, it appeared as if the training element was taken out of the equation as an optional. And we've since had a phone conversation with the Home Office, and it is not the case. They've explained it in more detail. And our feedback to them was, well, it's very poorly worded in that case, because lots of people understand it as you're not asking for training to be mandatory. So what they said to us is they'll try and do a publication very soon, an announcement very soon, to rectify that and explain it better. So we're still waiting for that, but it's imminent, I think. So yeah. So but again, because I personally feel that training is key, absolute key, for anything you do in life. Um, I think that is, to me, training is absolutely the cornerstone for any action. If you don't know what to do, you can't do it well. The more knowledge you have about something, the better equipped you are to deal with it. Which is why videos like hide, run, tell, run, hide, tell, that kind of stuff is so important. It's visual, it's only short, but it's effective, you know.
It is, Megan. I was just what you're talking about there, just a little bit about, but it's about embedding
Yeah.
that knowledge, isn't it? And through practice. And yeah, I served in Northern Ireland, and I can remember the odd occasion when one had to go forward, when one really wanted to run away, But the important thing is all of that training that we'd undergone made it so that you did it as an automatic response. And
Yeah.
I think, that the training that you're looking for, and that I've heard with Nick as well, is you want it so that it becomes embedded to a large degree.
Totally, totally. Do you know what? Decades ago, literally, I trained briefly as a nurse. I didn't complete my training because of personal circumstances, but I remember having a 3 month placement in a psychiatric ward, and the charge nurse at the time greeted me on my first morning and said, "Walk with me down the corridor." And as I walked with him, he said to me, rule number one is you never walk in front of a patient. You always walk either next to the person or behind them, never in front. And the reason was that a psychiatric patient could become violent. And that stuck with me. That one sentence he said, all these years, it really stuck with me. And it's just a sentence, but I learned from it, you know. And had he never said that to me, I wouldn't have even considered that as a dangerous thing to do. So, and this is why training is so important and so effective.
I think you're right, Figen. And in particular, when you look at the training that's required now, and you can, the SIA and others they're all trying to do something to improve it.
Yes.
But one of the things that we've found here at Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group recently, and I've been talking about actually for 4 years, and it seems like decades, is that has got to actually develop into competence. That
Yes.
it can't just be a tick box event, can it?
No.
Like
No, it can't. No, it's important to make sure that the training that you check out, whoever you train, that the training is actually understood and absorbed, and that even is important. When you have an event, for instance, at an arena or stadium, that when you brief your security staff, you actually don't just talk at them, you check their understanding and say stuff like, "So, Kevin, tell me again what I just said about that thing." And Michael, what did I say about that thing? And Susan, what do I mean by when I say this? And that's a simple way of keeping people alert. They need to pay attention because they can be called out any second. But at least you keep that alive and relevant.
I think you're right. And the interesting thing that, well, I don't think you're right. I actually know you're right. What concerns me, from what we see, is far too much training at this moment in time is the actual training, even the compliance, never mind the competency sections, but the compliance sections are not being trained. Now, this is really important because this isn't all on the SIA in terms of their training, because it also extends into the event staff as well.
Totally.
That they
Yes.
don't get it. They're just given, they're watched in, they're given thing. Not in many cases, but in far too many cases, they're effectively given the answers. And then the next thing, they're guarding thousands of people.
Yes, yeah. So obviously, training should never, ever, ever be a tick box exercise. And I'm glad the SIA are doing sort of spot checks on training facilities to make sure they get it right, they do it right. And, personally, I think we need a few secret shoppers in those training courses sometimes, but call them out. That's really important. And calling them out, calling bad training, bad security out, to me, will raise standards eventually, So to me, it is important that training is not done to get enough bodies into the venue.
Yeah.
And therefore the answers, of course, should never be given to any course participant. That is, to me, fraudulent. Actually, it's fraud.
It is.
You know, it's
See,
not right.
there is. It's not. I'm hoping in a few weeks' time to speak to someone specifically about that, because I do know that there are people that have taken on board this message,
Yeah.
and are actively ramping up their inspection processes. I also know the SIA, Paul Forward, Michelle, etc. They are committed
Yes.
to focusing on public safety anyway,
Yes, I
regardless
agree.
of where we are. And do you not think the fact that you've got it to the? I'm not saying I don't want Martyn's Law to go through, but I'm saying, do you not think that your success in driving a public awareness of public safety this far has been, a hell of an achievement in many ways?
Um, well, the security industry knows about Martyn's Law, so that is definitely a group of people who know about it. But the general public, who the law is actually meant to keep safe, don't know it. I always say, if you asked 100 people, do you know about Martyn's Law? I would say 95% of those 100 people would say never heard of it. 3% may say, I've heard that term, and I think I might have seen you on telly. You're the lady from the telly. And then 2% may say, yeah, I know what it's about because I've looked it up after I heard about it. But the government can't actually run a public awareness campaign until the king has signed it off, and that's normal standard procedure. So Martyn's Law is not an exception there. So I understand why it can't be done yet, but that doesn't stop me from talking about it publicly as much as I can, and I try and raise awareness, which is why I talk about it at schools, etc., and colleges and universities when I go there.
That's really interesting. The going into schools and
Mm.
colleges and making that effort. Why do you think it's important? And I have a feeling I understand why it's important that you go
Yeah.
into those arenas, but why do you? Why do you think it's
Um,
important to go there?
because the terrorist who killed Martyn and the others was only 22 years old, and I took a big step back at the very beginning in the first month and thought about that. And then when the Finsbury Mosque attack happened, there was this spike in Islamophobia of 300% in Manchester, and I decided that I will go on public television and publicly forgive the terrorist. And the reasons are many, but one of the reasons are because he was only so young, and I thought, no, you were not born a bad person. You were an innocent baby when you were born. Somebody poisoned your mind. But that then got me thinking that other people will have their mind poisoned, other young people. And I thought, well, prevention has to be better than cure. Go in and talk to young people. So I found out some of the techniques and methods and platforms these bad people use and the things they say to young people. So I do go into schools and talk to them about, hey, this is where they operate. This is the sort of grooming techniques they use. This is the information they want from you. These are the groups of people who are particularly vulnerable, and this is what you can recognize as a possible symptom of being radicalized. There are telltale signs, and if you have those within yourself or your friends, this is how you get help. And I think that's really, really important that young people know that and are very careful about the information, mainly the personal information they give about themselves, because terrorism recruiters are looking for chinks in any young person's armor. And,
That's
and
really,
once they get
sorry.
them, and what they then try and do, they get them on a private platform and that's where the proper brainwashing starts then, and it endangers young people.
You see, I thought you said you weren't an expert. It sounded pretty much like an expert to me
Well,
there.
it's common sense, is it not?
Yes, but and I think if you link that right back to one of the comments you made earlier, that you don't walk in front of a patient, that you didn't
Yeah.
know that until
No.
you were told that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why would you? And the same is why, unless you know that something bad exists, why would you know?
Yeah,
You,
exactly. And it literally is just opening people's eyes. And, particularly, for instance, coming back to terrorism, the Scan for All Staff video, goodness me, it is so good. It is so informative. And that knowledge, once you've seen that video, nobody can take that knowledge away from you. It's 15 minutes. That is so valuable, and it'll make you more careful about people taking selfies and photos and leaving bags and knowing what to do with all of that. It's so important. Training is fundamental.
it is vegan, and that's what I think. I think when I think it was an event where you were speaking in the Excel in London a couple of years ago. I think so I remember I asked about the ACT training certificate
Mhm.
because you could get them. And this is what got me. You could at that time, and again, if you hadn't have actually spoken about that and pushed that forward to the
Mhm.
Home Office and said this is wrong, the fact that you could easily copy those certificates and put whoever's
Yeah,
name on
yeah,
thing wouldn't have changed. But you, that sort of leadership that you're demonstrating, then how would anyone else know?
Mhm.
This certificate is wrong, but this
Yeah.
certificate enables you to go and work in an environment where public
Yeah.
safety. How do you feel when you see things like that?
Well, obviously, it's dangerous that people can just falsify things, but you kindly pointed it out, which means you taught me, and I was then able to go to SIA, who were horrified and then rectified it, so it can't be falsified anymore. So, and I thank you for that. So these are important things that's why training is so effective, and learning about things is so effective, and sharing information is important. So, we are in a world where danger can come from all directions, and we all need to learn from each other, and teach each other, and share that knowledge, and share that common responsibility of security, and falsifying records, and shortchanging students by giving them the answers just to get the piece of paper to go and work is wrong. It's ethically, morally wrong, and I don't know how people can sleep at night if they do that sort of practice,
Yeah,
quite frankly.
it is. It's a terrible situation. Thanks for that. I wasn't expecting to say that, but that was. Hey, it's nice. Me actually. But the point about it is vegan, and that thing is that most people haven't got, and this is one of the reasons why I think what you do is really. I was able to speak to you, knowing that what I said, if it had merit, would be passed on and
Mhm.
would be spoken, you would
Yeah.
speak to people. All too often, there aren't people that like you that you can go to and speak to. There is no face of things. One of my friends, Dawn Dines, she's currently working with the government, and it seems to me that when you're the face of something,
Mhm.
it's an incredibly lonely path at times, or
Yeah.
or an amazing responsibility. The pressure. How do you cope
Mm.
with that
Yeah,
responsibility?
it can get a lonely place, but it's big. But when you have enough drive, it's okay to be lonely if you have a purpose and determination. And I have I suppose, bloody-mindedness in my head. I did tell the first security minister I ever met that I'm going to be like a mosquito buzzing around and I won't go anywhere. And, I'm sat here in my office at home where I spent hours, days doing my dissertation and all my essays. And even now, this is now a full-time job. When I'm not traveling, I'm sat at my desk all day. So I have a constant reminder here of Martyn's ashes in an urn next to me. And next to him is an urn with his cat's ashes. She died three weeks later. And in front of the urns are something that the only thing I keep private about my life are two bears and a broken heart made of metal. And in that metal, in those metal heart and bears are shrapnel from Martyn's body that the police kindly gave me. So that is my inspiration, and that's my drive to see all of that.
That's in,
So
that I get it. I really do. I get it. In terms of what that is, but that I just want to sort of finish now, because I'm grateful for your time, and I'm sure you've got loads of other people that want to talk to you. But how do you? I've heard you speak, and I've read that all you ever ask for is your train fare, basically, to go and do
yeah.
all of these things that you do. Your travel expenses.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm. Yeah,
When we were upstairs, when we were upstairs, was it, or just downstairs? It was freezing, wasn't it, in Manchester?
yeah.
That thing. Michael Kill needs to sort that out. Yeah,
Yes, it
but
was cold in that
it
building.
was cold. But there was the lovely lady. Is it Chrissy, the photographer?
Yeah,
She seems to know. What a lovely lady. And she also, because I've got big ears, is I heard what she said, because she asked how you were going to keep going, because you
yeah,
can't pay for all of this. I mean, okay, even if you get your what do you call it? Your travel expenses paid. There's still
mhm,
all the time to get there, the time to be there, the time to
yeah.
get home, and all that. How are you able to do this, Figen?
Um, well, I have a very kind husband who luckily earns well, and he's supporting me where he can because not everybody pays my expenses, and I often have to pay them myself. But on the other hand, money isn't important to me. I'm not doing this to earn money. It's never even on my radar. I don't care about money. For me, it is the legislation. I do not want other families to be affected the way we have. It's not just, obviously I'm doing this work as his mum. It's always been my job that I am now Martyn's representative and his voice.
Yeah.
Um, which is also why I'm doing this as a mother. Why I said to my husband, "Love you dearly, but I have to do this on my own, Martyn's Law, as a mum, not as a parent." So I kind of left him out of the equation. But without his support, I could never have done this work as much as I did. So he's very kind, very generous, and yeah, I don't want to earn money with this. It's literally, I just want the legislation. Don't want any other family in our situation because it's just horrible. It really is.
And that I think is almost the perfect finish and conclusion to this. I can't think of a better thing to sort of say. Not wanting any other families there. Is there any last sort of comments that you want to make to say, right, let's get this done? Where can we go, and how can we push this over the hill, get that last mile?
I think there's two things. First of all, be active on social media about it, LinkedIn particularly. Speak out on LinkedIn, tag the Home Office in. So that tag the ministers in if you need to, but tag the Home Office in. They need to know, they are actually wanting to know what the industry is thinking about it. But secondly, I want to say that, I've lost Martyn, but I've gained a whole, I mean, I see it as Martyn's gift to me. I've gained a whole industry as friends. And I'm in such good company with all of you. It's been so humbling to meet so many incredibly kind, lovely people.
Well, yeah, and I hate myself for doing this, but you just reminded me. What did you think to the fact that business licensing, given it was one of the recommendations that Sir
Yeah.
John Saunders made, you know, I I just can't get over the fact that it's not part of, or I can't find out anything about it. You heard
Well,
anything?
and unfortunately, not everything Sir John said and recommended has been taken up. All I would say is that he's obviously monitoring, although he's retired now, he's still monitoring stuff. And yeah, the government will, at the end of the day, do what the government wants. But wherever I can and the campaign team can, we're trying our hardest to influence things while we still can. And that's all I can say to it, really.
And on that note, I'm going to say, you know that you've got mine, anybody that I can speak to, be a voice to in support of what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Figen. You've amazed me from the first time we spoke on that Zoom call. Your actual humility, your ability and desire to drive something, and your tenacity, have been an inspiration for us all. So, Figen Murray, what can I say? Sorry,
Thank you very
Figen Murray,
much.
OBE. So
Goodness.
you're a star, and you thoroughly deserve it. Keep going, Figen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peace out, everyone.